Hi everyone. So now that you've had some time to get more familiar with OpenRefine, I wanted to just add a little bit, add a few more examples of things that can be done with this program that are going to be useful for you, data analysis, especially with large data sets, and also to look at some of the more enhanced, elaborated ways that we can use regular expressions. So I'm actually going to work with one of our existing projects. This is the first 100,000 rows that we looked at in class the other day. And I want to highlight a couple of things here. So one of them is I want to come back to the issue of facets. So hopefully you all are pretty familiar now already with this idea of the text facet, right? Very simple way to select all of the occurrences of a particular value within the data set. And I just want to point out one aspect of this. We know, for example, that we can sort by name, right, which is not too meaningful for us when we're sorting by numbers, although it was pointed out in one of the classes that these aren't in what we would consider numerical order. And the reason why that is because, as indicated by all of the black text here, and the fact that we didn't ask it to parse by data type on the way in, actually on the original screen when we imported this data, right now, for everything except for our false values here, we can see as we scan across that it's actually interpreting all of these, everything but this our constructed has CPW column, it is interpreting as strings. Okay, what that means is that it's seeing numbers not as numerical values, but actually just as characters, right? And so that's why we see something that looks strange at first, right, when we expect this to be sorted by quote unquote name, right, where we see like, okay, 2000, but then we see that, for example, 212 is coming after 2023. Well, of course, that's because in string comparison, 20 comes before 21, right? So if we wanted to change that, we would actually need to change the data type in this column, which we can do by going here to edit cells, and under common transformation, we're going to see an option for toNumber, right? And that's not going to make much difference to us here, other than to sort, when we sort by quote unquote name, to perhaps, I think, hopefully sort them in the way that we expect, but let's find out. So if I do a numeric facet here, so this is actually sort of a preview. It actually, if we have numerical data and it is set up as numbers, what we get is actually a free histogram from OpenRefine. And we can actually scale this. Now there's nothing, we can't export this. It's good as a quick overview, especially if we have, sort of isolated data. It can give us a sense of the shape of the data. So if you have already collected and cleaned a bunch of data and you kind of want to see what the shape of things matching that is, it's useful to do. You can see it's sort of interpreting these things weirdly. It's not 2900. I can see, most of my values are between 0 and 600, and you see that it's actually updating the matching row count here, so I can kind of get a sense of that as I go. But the thing that I actually wanted to, let's see, if I do a text facet here, I think I'm still going to get, let's see what kind of sorting I get. So I still kind of get the unexpected sorting here because I've told it to facet treating this as text. So that's another thing to be aware of, is that we can adapt the type of facet that we do to reflect the way we want the data to be treated in that moment, even if the column data format has been turned to something else, right? So in this case, I have converted these to numbers, but when I do a text facet, it will treat them as text regardless. The other thing that I want to point out here is this 573 choices. So we referred to this as a way of indicating, how many different start station IDs there are, for example, in this data set. If I click on this, what I actually get is a tab separated list of the values and the counts. So this is something where I could actually copy this out, throw it into a text edit file, save it as a TXT, and then use this, for example, to generate a histogram if I wanted something a little bit more, if I wanted to be able to do that in something like Excel, right? So they actually used to support a way to do this sort of mini histogram on this type of thing right in OpenRefine. It doesn't seem like they do that anymore. That was an older version. But just so you know that you can actually extract this information very, very quickly. I could obviously sort it either by number or by count. And so if I wanted to create a histogram of this data, the only thing I need to do is save this out, open it up in Excel, and generate the chart, as those of you who did the histogram have already had experience doing. So again, handy trick for manipulating the data, for kind of getting a sense of it. Again, what we're looking for here is a lot of different ways to evaluate it. The other thing that we noted is that, if I look at my undo redo history here, it will, for example, as I said, the undo redo history will capture all meaningful transformations of the data. So in this case, converting it to a number counts as a meaningful transformation. But what if I want to share this data with somebody and highlight something? So I'm going to go back to my text facet here. One of the things, because we don't have this sort of show hide feature that we have in something like Microsoft Excel, if we want to kind of present a particular view of the data and share that with a colleague, or keep a reference of it, it's a little bit trickier, or it seems that way at first. In fact, there's a great feature here that lets us do just that. So for example, if I'm just going to go ahead and select a handful of stations for the heck of it, right? It doesn't matter which ones. Oops, wait. So again, if I want to include more than one at a time, I need to specifically choose this include. Okay, so I've chosen 3 station IDs, doesn't really matter. But we can see again from the undo redo history, these facets don't appear in my undo redo history. So how do I preserve a view of them, right? This isolation, the fact that it's 624 matching rows, et cetera, et cetera. What if I wanted to get more granular on that? I don't know, edit it down by end station ID, any of that. Well, this is another case where where we can do this is we can ask it to generate what we call a permalink, okay? So what this permalink is, and I hope you noticed that you saw how this URL transformed up here, this permalink essentially incorporates, we can almost read it, in fact, right? It says facets, type, name, start, station ID, right? So it's actually kind of detailing in quasi-readable way the transformations that exist here. This permalink I can then open at a later time, and it's going to look exactly the way I was last viewing it, okay? So this is going to be really important for you as you're creating your documents for your final projects. You want to make sure that you register those that every time you generate a view that you're using to, to gain an insight, right? Especially if it becomes useful in your story or something like that, that you're actually including that that sort of URL. Now, obviously, you can't just paste this into an email and send it to somebody, because unless they have your original data set and OpenRefine running, it's not going to do anything, right? But as long as I do have that, if I have OpenRefine running, and I have your data set, then I can, or an export of this project, right? I can import that project to my own version of OpenRefine, use this link to actually see what you are seeing, or we're seeing at that point in time. So super useful thing there. The other thing, so let's look at trip duration really quick here. So I'm going to go ahead and just see if I can do a common transform. I'm going to do this to number, right? Because this is number of seconds. And see if I can also quickly do a numeric facet. So what you'll see is that this is not too useful, because there's actually such a spread in the duration. Apparently somebody had a bike out for 430,000 seconds, which seems like an awful lot. And in fact, I'm very curious what that was. So when I restrict this, I get this example. So somebody kept a bike out for 5 days, apparently. Wonder what was going on there. They took it out at State Street and Smith Street, and they finally returned it on Nassau Street and Navy Street. I wonder what that cost. So, this is, again, this can be a great way to kind of get a broad overview of your data. Of course, if you have outliers on a very large data set, it's going to be very hard to see any kind of pattern, and we can't obviously expand this pattern. But just to show that basic histogram can be done here too. So the next thing that I want to look at is, we can also do this with, for example, with time. So I'm going to do a transformation to date. This is a date time. And I can actually create a timeline facet on this that will show me the distribution of timestamps. So for this one, if I do a timeline facet, now I can get a really interesting view on what the what the times are, what the sort of peaks and valleys are in when people leave city bike stations with bikes. Finally, I want to start to expand on the, so you may find that useful in analysis. The last thing I want to do here is expand on some of the work that we've started doing with regular expressions. This is going to be augmented for your next assignment, for which you're not going to use this data. You're going to use data related to your final project. And so for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do add column based on this column. So we're going back to our regular expressions here. So my basic outline is this value.match, right? So here we have, it's going to treat this column as text. I haven't actually converted it to a date time. But let's say I want to do something that, initially might seem kind of difficult, like I decide I want to capture all of the values between 0 and 3 a.m., between midnight and 3 a.m., right? Well, there's a few things that I want to highlight here. So the first is, I know, or on September 1st, let's say, right? So I know that I can start with 9/1/2016. Now, first of all, as we can probably tell, the forward slashes are reserved characters, right? They have a special meaning in the context of this function. We add them to indicate that we're about to do a regular expression. So we can't just use them straight up in a regular expression. We have to do what we call escaping. And the way that we escape in this context is with a backslash. So it looks a little bit funny, but this two-character pair is being read by OpenRefine as a genuine forward slash, not the special character for us forward slash. So I'm going to put in 2016 here. Now what comes next in my date time? The next thing that comes is a space, okay? And that \s is a special character code for my regular expressions. And I'm going to share a reference to these for you so that you can get a feel for what's available. But that means any white space character. So it could be a space, it could be a tab. That's just sort of how we put it there. Now, if what I want to do is find everything between midnight and 3 a.m., I know that the first character is still going to be a 0, right? Because it's either 00, 01, 02, or 03. So now what I can do is I can say, look, I want this to be anything from 0 to 3. So I have to have 1 0, and then I can have the next character be a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3. And that 0-3 means from 0 to 3 inclusive. Okay, and then I can say, and the rest can be anything you want because I don't care about the minutes and seconds, right? And so I'm going to use my is not null here because if I don't put the is not null, then actually nothing shows up in the resulting column. But so far it looks pretty good because all of these timestamps match what I'm looking for, but they all match what I'm looking for, and so they're coming up true. So I'm going to say from midnight, it's not very good spelling, to 3, and here we go. Let's see. So I'm getting some trues. That's good. I knew that. But let's see if I do a text facet. Am I getting any false? So far, so good. It looks like out of these first ones, this first 100,000, I have 766. I have 766 that match from midnight to 3 a.m. on September 1st. And I can just take a peek here. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, no, wait, sorry, I did it on stop time, not start time. I can take a peek here and see that, yes, all of these ones that are coming back with falses are definitely outside the range that I'm looking for, right? So this is really just a spot check. I would obviously want to confirm this. An easier way to confirm this probably would be to click on the true ones and check those out. But it looks like things are pretty good. So something to think about going forward. We'll talk in more detail about regular expressions in class and practice creating them and describing them in English, which is going to be your assignment. But until then, I hope you all have a good few days.